If you or a loved one is struggling with addiction, please call Parents and Addicts in Need at 559-579-1551 or check us out online at painnonprofit.org. Follow us on social media at Pain Nonprofit. Please subscribe to the podcast and share with others wherever you get podcasts. To donate, please click the link in the description and help us save more lives gripped by addiction. Don't Hide the Scars, a weekly podcast focused on addiction and recovery. Created by the nonprofit Pain, Parents and Addicts in Need, and founded by Flindt Andersen.
Randy Haveson, author of Party with the Plan, The Low Guide Risk to Drinking, The Ego Cleanse, Becoming Your Own Best Friend and Owner, founder of the RISE organization, Tedx Speaker, public speaker. You've been on TV show. You've done so much. So we are here to just pick your brain and knowledge. So thanks for joining Flindt and myself.
I am honored to be here. Thank you for the opportunity, and I'm happy to be of service in any way that I can.
Absolutely.
Absolutely.
So, with your speaking, you've touched a lot of college campuses, and I know you continue to do that. I'm really interested in what kind of feedback you're getting when you bring up these real life issues to these young adults, especially with substance abuse, because I know you share your story, which is a wild one that we might pick some moments out that are some key stuff.
Yeah. Actually, they received it really well. And because my approach isn't telling them what to do, the college kids, actually everybody is sick of, just say no and don't do it. And, those kind of messages, they just don't work. So the approach that I used was, hey, if you're going to do it, especially with alcohol, here's how to do it in a way where you're going to lower your risk for getting in trouble. So it kind of lays out a map for them that says, if you can stick to these guidelines, your chance of getting in trouble is really minimal. However, if you're not able to stay to those guidelines, then it means you probably have a problem.
Yeah.
Right.
So it's a way for them to self-identify it.
And it's kind of the shitty thing with the disease of addiction. It's a self-diagnosed thing, until we go, oh, yeah, I've got this. We're screwed.
Right.
But the problem is we have that realization one day, oh, my God, I think I have a problem. But then we go score again. And then, it's not that bad. I can control. I'll be okay. So that grip of addiction, man, it just, I watch it. I've been clean now over 38 years.
Good
and
for you.
I still watch how it just ravages through families and just destroys really good people. And it's baffling how this happens. I have a neighbor, and his 29-year-old son just died of an overdose. Uh-huh. And it's like, how did that happen? I said, if you look for the why, you're going to just burn yourself into the ground.
Right.
Addiction has no logic to it. So how this happened, why it happened, it doesn't matter. It's like, what are you going to do about it?
Right.
Yeah.
Well, Randy, there's a lot of times with the families that I deal with that's the big thing is the why. And they want to actually blame something else on their kid's substance abuse or addiction, whatever you want to call it. So they're looking for, well, it's got to be ADHD. It has to be bipolar. They were diagnosed with this, that, or the other thing. And I'll look at these parents and sometimes say, look, this is not a slight to your kid, but sometimes they're just a kid. And sometimes they're just a good old fashioned drug addict. And so stop looking for that why. Let's look at the solution here and how we're going to change this so your kid does not die of an overdose, because we're having kids dropping like flies out here.
And it's so every one of them is such a horrible tragedy.
Yeah.
And if only they got that message a day before, just maybe. But there's no why. And I used to watch a lot of parents blame themselves, blame each other. A divorced couple, well, it's mom's fault, it's dad's fault. And, if only it was cloudy that day instead of sunny. You can, any reason, but what it comes down to is addiction sucks. Right. And it's just a horrible, horrific disease.
Right.
Yeah.
And, good people get sucked into it. And I love what you guys are doing, because this is solution. You were taking a look at your own pain and how can I help others? That's why I do this.
Right.
Every morning I'm on my knees saying, thank you for all these amazing gifts. What can I do to be of service today?
Right. Right.
Yeah.
So, this is an easy one. Today I woke up going, I'm going to talk on Jason's show.
Well, bless you, my friend. And I think it's a big part of trying to get across. Oddly enough, I was having a little struggle recently, and Flindt and I had a good heart-to-heart, and all of a sudden I've had the floodgates open of people reaching out to me. I'm like, okay, I guess I'm in my place. And, the best I could tell people sometimes is life lived forward, lessons lived backwards. Take a look at it. I got one buddy reached out, kid. I say kid. He was a kid when I worked with him at a catering business. I think he's probably near 30 now. But, one family member dying of liver disease, drinking, the other lung, all these things. And then he's struggling with different stuff. And I went, hey, let's get you to some kind of meeting because, you're shoving shit up your nose. The next thing that happens is you get something with fentanyl in it and you're not ever going to text me again. Right. This ain't going to happen. Yeah. Right. So let's take a look at what in the past and start moving forward with those lessons as soon as possible. Right.
Randy, I also want to go back to what you said about the college kids that you've spoken to, because I've done the same thing, a bunch of universities here in California. And I have found that these kids, even high school kids, even though they're not adults, they want to be treated like adults. Yeah. And this isn't my generation, the 50s and 60s, okay, where, we were just treated like little kids until we weren't. Right. These little kids today, they're sharp. And we always get more kids coming up to us afterwards when we are truthful with them, when we're telling them the real story about it without condemning what they're doing. That is important. You cannot condemn these kids, but on the other hand, they love hearing, and I even hate to put it this way, but they love hearing the gory stories. Okay. And so we go in there and tell them, we literally tell them what we did in our addiction. Right. And it has a tendency to wake them up at least a little bit, at least for a couple of weeks. We've got their attention,
Yeah, exactly. And I think being real with them is the best way to go about it.
Yep.
I mean, if you attempt to sugarcoat things, or you want to paint this, if you use drugs, you're going to become an addict. You say that and they're going to be like, dude, no, I'm not.
Right.
But if you say, I didn't think I would ever become an addict, and all of a sudden I was, that's real to them. So, the last thing kids want to do is being told what to do.
Right. Absolutely.
I could tell my daughter, hey, you go walk in that room right now. I'm giving you $10,000. It's like, I'm not going to walk in that room. So they don't want to be told what to do, but they will allow themselves to be educated if you present it in a way that is not demeaning to them and allows them to make their own choices.
Right. And I also think that at least the one thing that I do try to get across to all these kids, though, is this. It's just a little simple 2-line deal. In my day, experimentation wasn't going to kill you. Yeah. Today, experimentation can and will kill you.
Yeah.
And that has to be said, because they have to know it somewhere in that head. Because, here's the other thing. Parents all the time and educators and everybody else are saying, these kids don't know that there's fentanyl in these blue M30 pills, or they don't think there's fentanyl in Xanax. And I'm going, bullshit. Okay. They all know what fentanyl is. They all know what the M30 pill is. They all know that Xanax could be laced with fentanyl. So you have to at least let them, again, hear those words. It can and will kill you. Now, where they take it from there, that's up to them.
Absolutely. But, another big part of it is they think it's not going to happen to me.
Of course. Mm-hmm.
But when they hear me say, I never thought it was going to happen to me. And you know what? It happened to me. And, I'll say to them, do I look like a drug addict to you? Do I look like an alcoholic?
Do we have the same speech? I think we do.
But that, when you speak truth, you speak truth.
Right. Absolutely.
And it translates in different languages. It translates to, all different socioeconomic races, genders, everything. I mean, when you speak truth, you speak truth.
Right. Do you find that some of these school districts or venues that you're speaking in, that they actually don't want you to speak that truth?
Oh, yes.
You bet.
Wow.
You bet.
I actually stopped speaking at high schools.
Yep.
Because they wanted me to tone it down, water it down. And I was like,
they wanted you to go all Red Ribbon Week on them.
Yeah. And it's like, these kids are watching Pornhub in their sixth grade classrooms, but I can't talk to them about alcohol and cocaine in a realistic way. I mean, come on.
Right.
Yeah. It's, unfortunately, our education system needs assistance with the real life experience that they need to hear about and that they need to really learn from.
Well, and I think my opinion too, we're all parents here, but the influx of what parenting is nowadays, it's crazy what they're wanting to put on a school system to offer to students. Like, well, that's a parent's job. Right. And yet what they're going, wait, not my kid. So it's this weird, shitty limbo that I think those in the education system get stuck in, unfortunately, because you're right, Randy. I spoke at a class, and afterwards a teacher, because I brought up my struggles with pornography. I, was very honest with these kids and spoke with them about sex and love addiction. And a teacher afterwards said, thank you. There's two students of mine, at least, that are struggling with that. Right. And, they're being exposed to this thing. I mean, we're seeing men and women completely impotent in their late teens, early 20s because of their exposure to pornography. So if we can't be honest about all these things that can really screw up this thing up here, then what good are we there? So I don't blame either one of you guys for not wanting to do it. I got lucky because it was a friend's class and she was like, yes, please be unfiltered.
Yeah, but it's really hard. It's almost like we need to put an educational system together that we put on, let's do this. Right. Put educational programming, we can do it online, and maybe it'll catch on with the teens and they'll actually watch it during their downtime and talk about pornography and talk about alcohol, talk about cocaine, talk about experimentation can kill you, how to be more careful with that. Those are the kind of things that are needed.
Yeah.
It needs to be outside the classroom because, the educational system is saying the parents need to do that. The parents are saying the schools need to do that. So,
and then when they do, then they fight. Yeah, do that, but wait, not this way.
Right. Yes. And the other thing too is, kids spend they spend more time in school than they do at home. And so the educational system, I mean, think about it. It's how many hours a day are each one of these kids spending at school from junior high to high school. So the educational system has to do something here, okay, in order to help out the parent. I really believe that. Look, I'm not for adding another brick or another layer to a teacher's responsibility, because sometimes these teachers, they just can't teach. They're everybody's counselor. They're this, they're that, they're the other thing. But there has to be some sort of change in this system, because we're in a shitstorm out here, and I'm sure it's the same where you're at too.
Oh, are you kidding? I'm in Florida. You want to?
Yeah, Jesus. Yeah, no kidding. I mean, all you got to do is think Broward County.
Don't get me started. We're not going to go there. But more needs to be done. But I think the schools are pretty much tapped out. And to look to them for solutions, I really don't think it's going to happen. And I think it needs to happen outside the classroom. I think social media is the number one way, because a lot of these kids are into that, and not a lot, all of them. So, that might be a way to go to it, but that's why things like this are so important. We need to educate parents on how to talk to their kids about these things. I talked to my daughter from the time she was really young. Right. And when she started to know people who are drinking and using, I said, just to let you know very plainly, if I find out that you're drinking or using, you're not going to get your driver's license.
Right.
And you're just not going to, what do you mean? I'm like, yeah, you at least a year, and we'll see how things go from there. But there are consequences if you want to do that. When she did, she is just now getting her driver's license at 17.
Right.
Wow.
Right.
Yeah. Because I was going to ask you, how, as someone in recovery, did you address this in your own home?
All the time. And the first time I found out that she drank, she said, "Dad, are you mad at me?" I said, "I'm not mad. I'm sad. I'm scared because I know where this can go. And I've been talking to you about this for a long time. And now you just opened that door. So yeah, I'm scared."
Yeah. See, that just proves my point with all these parents and educators and everybody that I'm talking to about this. Kids, they're not bad kids, but kids are going to experiment. They're going to lie to us parents. They're going to do all of these things. If I have to have one more parent come in and say, my child, it tells me everything. Oh, bullshit. Okay?
It almost made Randy spit his water out.
Yeah.
Right. All over the place. All right. I just threw up in my mouth. Okay. Yeah. Because if I have to hear another parent say that, I'm going to rip out my own eyeballs. It's the kids experiment, kids cheat, kids lie, kids do it all.
New Perceptions North, the premier drug and alcohol treatment and recovery center in Central California. A full continuum of medically supervised, top-quality care with programs for detox, inpatient residential treatment with dual diagnosis, intensive outpatient treatment, sober living, support groups, and more. With 50-plus years of combined experience and sobriety, Flindt, Andersen, and Thelma Gatlin Wilson provide adult men and women with the highest caliber of professional health care, treating each client with compassion and respect, and a safe, comfortable environment. To begin the process of recovery, to proudly create and sustain a life without addiction, call 559-978-1507 or visit newperceptionsnorth.com.
You said something there that, and meaning to educate the parents. I have found, and I've been doing this a long time, that is the hardest thing to do. There's high schools out here. And by the way, Randy, 93% of our clientele went to one of the finest school districts in the country right here.
Oh, yeah.
Right. So I made this big push a number of years pre-COVID to start talking to parents about this. And the school actually helped. And so they sent things home. They emailed these parents. Out of a school of 3,000 kids, we had 2 parents show up to this thing. See, the key and the hard part is getting the parents' asses in the seats so we can talk to them.
Yes.
They don't want to show up to, quote, a drug talk because they're afraid that if somebody else shows up, they're going to think that their kid has a problem.
Exactly.
And there it is.
Yeah. And that's all that ego stuff out there that, I have to have this good persona out there so people think I'm a good parent. My parent, one of the things I talk about is that my parents didn't know what to do, so they did nothing.
Right.
They had no clue as I started to go down that path. And they're like, it was, "What's wrong with you?" I'm like, "Nothing, I'm good." I was actually feeling better than I'd ever felt in my whole life.
Of course. But when we all start out, we all feel good.
Yeah, they didn't know what to do, so they did nothing. When my daughter started, I said, "Oh, by the way, we're going to start drug testing you randomly."
God, good
what?
For you.
That's my personal rights. It's like, no, you are a minor, and we're going to drug test you to make sure.
And you're in my house, and it's my rules. Yeah. Right. And again, I'll tell parents, would you rather piss your kid off or would you rather attend their funeral?
Yes, exactly. And I got to tell you, my daughter experimented a little bit more, experimented with marijuana, and we drug tested her and caught her. And I said, I don't even know what to say to you. You want to keep going down this path? Your life is going to get very miserable if you keep doing this. And by the way, let me have your phone. That's going to be gone for a week.
Wow. Teenage girl, no phone for a week.
Good for you.
Yep. And
again, you're paying for the phone.
Yeah. And she started to watch other people and what was happening to them. And she came to me one day, said, "Dad, you know what? You're right. I mean, I'm done with that. I'm not doing that anymore." I don't want to be a part of it. It's, I do embarrassing shit when I'm high, and I don't want to be that person anymore. I'm like, good. I said, we're still going to drug test you. She said, yeah, go for it. Drug test me as much as you want. And she has not used or drank since then. Now she's like, okay, well, what about when I get to college? I'm like, we'll talk about that then.
Right.
Because you think you've done some dumb shit now, just wait.
Right.
Yeah.
Oh boy. You brought up ego earlier, which I want to get into because you wrote the book, The Ego Cleanse, and so much valuable stuff in there. What, from your experience and your past, why did you want to write this book and really focus on the ego?
Oh, wow. What a great question. I love that.
He's good, isn't he? He's good.
Summed it up. Yes. When I got into recovery and I would go to meetings, I would notice, and I started looking at who are the people who relapse and who sticks around. Mm-hmm. And the thing that I found is people who had big egos were the ones who relapsed and were too demoralized to come back and admit it. Mm-hmm. And that guy who would sit in the same chair, he's been sitting there for 20 years, drinking a gallon of coffee at 8 o'clock, spouting pages of the big book, talking about how fucking spiritual he is. I remember looking at, dude, I don't want anything you have except for that time.
Right.
Yeah.
And I realized that there's a difference between being sober and being in recovery.
There it is.
And being sober is about the time. I have 10 years. I have 5 years. No. Recovery is about what are you doing to make yourself a better person today? Yep. Because as you do that, if you raise your self-esteem, the drinking and using is not even, I'm not doing that today.
Right.
I went, so I believe in treating yourself like your own best friend. We have a tendency to treat ourselves like our own worst enemy rather than our own best friend. Mm-hmm. And my best friend says, I'm thinking about drinking today. I'm going to say, what can I do to help you to make that not happen? Because I know what happens to you when you have a day of drinking. How can I help you? Rather than, you shouldn't be having those thoughts. It's, oh my God, your recovery sucks and you need it. No, be kind, be gentle, do it with esteem. So as I started to do that more and more and raising my own self-esteem and reading books and, working with a therapist and different people, it started to really come into fruition for me, this difference we have in our society between ego and self-esteem. That our society values, what kind of car do you drive? What's the number on a scale? How much money do you make? What zip code do you live in? And those are all the ego things that we're taught that if we have these things, we're going to be happy and we're going to be successful. But it's a lie. It doesn't happen. Happiness comes inside, not outside. I remember we did a cruise one time to the Panama Canal, and we went through this area called the San Blas Islands. And there are these people there. We got off the ship at one of these things. These people are living on dirt floors. They don't have shoes. They're wearing Kentucky Fried Chicken T-shirts that are torn. And they all have smiles on their face. And they're all just so happy. And this woman was selling this thing for like $5. And I was like, oh my God, that is so beautiful. You made it? She said, uh-huh. I said, can I give you $10? She's like, no, $5.
Right.
I'm like, really? She goes, oh, yeah, no, $5. Okay. Mm-hmm. So I gave her the $5. And these people, from our standards of what success and wealth and worth is like, have nothing, but they're the happiest people I've ever seen in my life.
Right.
Yeah.
So it helped me to realize that happiness and success and self-worth has nothing to do with what you have in the outside world. So I wrote my book, The Ego Cleanse, to teach people how to move down that continuum, because our society says ego and self-esteem are connected. I believe they're opposites, that when you reinforce your ego, you're denying your self-esteem. When you build your self-esteem, you deny your ego. So I want to teach people how to move down that continuum. And especially now, do we need more self-esteem? Yeah. And in fact, if I can just kind of talk about this for a second, my latest thing that I'm putting my energy into, I'm putting together a 3-day event called Esteem Fest, which is going to be speakers and teaching people how to meditate and Qigong and little chair yoga. Meditation doesn't have to be this 30-minute thing where you sit there. Meditation could be 5 minutes.
Right.
Sure. Just kind of sitting, chill for a few minutes. And then on Sunday at Esteem Fest, we're all going to Disney's Magic Kingdom together. So it's about learning and growing and playing together. So I'm putting together this event, and we're going to do it in October. And I'm just so psyched. And hopefully this is going to be an annual thing that we're going to continue to do that teaches people how to raise their self-esteem and stay away from ego.
Yeah,
that's beautiful.
It's an interesting thing. I had a buddy of mine, Sonny Mayo, guitar guy, hard rock, metal world, works with a great organization called Rock to Recovery.
Oh yeah, I know.
And I've been trying meditating a little more per his challenge. I'm like, I just can't seem to find a quiet space. And he's like, good. And he goes, because the noise is the enemy anyways, and that's the work you got to do to silence out. So I said, I don't care where you are. If you didn't notice yesterday, I got real quiet. We had some shit
we did.
outside of our organization.
Yeah.
And I got real quiet. I sat there for 5 minutes, eyes open, just staring forward. And I was like, okay, 5 minutes is all I can do now. But
and that's meditation. Right. You did it.
Yeah.
A lot of people think you have to find that spot and do that. No, it's just sitting quiet. For me, my favorite spot is in the car. I turn the music off and I'm just there and I'm focusing on the road and, no other noise.
Right. That's the other challenge that Flint's thrown out to me. I can't make it more than about 10 minutes in the car, but I'm working on it. We'll get there someday.
Yeah.
We'll get there
Go
someday.
from 10 to 12 and 12 to 15. Right. Yeah. It's all progress. It's not perfection.
Right. This is not a foot race.
Yes. There's no there.
Right.
Right.
Yeah.
Well, and I think that's probably the ego that comes in too, is like you're saying, the guy, the 20 years, same chair, talking about his spirituality, is that competition that some people have. Forget who it was, something, he had said something that I completely disagreed with. Well, I'm not going to go back to the room when I fell off because I found a lot of people shame. And my argument was, well, you're in the wrong fucking room.
Yeah. Yeah. Exactly. Go find another room.
Right. Yeah. That ego of time, because reality is, what do I always say? Flindt, who woke up, or what time did you wake up?
8.
I woke up at 6:30. I have more sobriety today.
Yeah.
That's it. It's like, come on, guys. That's why it's one day at a time.
Right.
Exactly. And I've met people that have 90 days who have more spiritual connection than some with 20 years.
Absolutely.
So it's not about the time. It's about the quality of how you live your life.
Right.
How do you, when you've been a mentor to people, get that across to them?
Talk to them about it. Yeah. But, you can lead a horse to water. You can't make them drink. So you can offer it, but it's up to them what they want to do with it.
Right.
Right.
And the cool part, all these messages and the books and the self-help and the meetings and all that, the way I look at it, it's kind of like you go to the grocery store and you see the cereal aisle. There's so many to choose from. You don't take all of it. You just kind of pick which one fits you best, which one you like best. And you might eat one for a little while. Oh, I really like Special K. And then, you know what? I'm going to try granola now. And then go over and have some granola. It's all cereal. As long as you're eating it, it doesn't matter what type. Just find one that works for you. And that's why I have a big problem with people like, oh no, Frosted Flakes. If everyone ate Frosted Flakes, everything would be okay. It's like, dude, that is ego personified.
Right.
Sure.
Is let people choose their own, choose what they want.
Flindt, what was it for you or with your recovery as far as the discovery process for what works for you? I've never asked you that.
There was a lot of different things that I did. Look, I had a 23-year addiction, so there was there was a lot to fix, or at least try to. And look, I've got an ego the size of Montana. And I knew I had to put that in check, somehow, some way, because like all of us, in our addiction, we can bullshit the best of them.
Yeah.
And I mean, in my addiction, I was going to meetings while I was still using. And,
Wow.
and I was so good, AA meetings were still asking me to come in and speak. And so I'm in there speaking while I'm using, and, yeah. I mean, Jesus, I was just like the king here, and hated myself for it.
Yeah.
And look, the first 4 years of my recovery it was not fun. Let me just put it that way, because I'm one of those guys that I want change now. It needs to be right now. But I had a list, so long of things that needed to be changed until I finally sat there and went, okay, I can't change everything. Mm-hmm. I'm never going to probably even complete this list. So I'm going to start with this first, and I'm going to work on that, and I'm going to put everything else to the side. No matter how much I hate it, everything else has to go to the side. So I just picked one thing. And if it took me 2 months or 6 months or whatever it was, all right, that's what I focused on. Okay. And it was miserable, to be honest with you, because as I'm trying to, and again, we're never going to be perfect here, and I'm, again, one of those guys that, okay, this has to be perfect. That's the first thing I had to realize, is that I was not going to be perfect here.
Right.
So again, picked one thing, worked on it, went to the next. Mm-hmm. Went to the next. Now, have I completed that list? No. Okay. I don't think I'll ever complete the list. Nope, but as long as I'm striving for it, I'm going to be okay.
Yep.
What about you, Randy?
Yeah, for me, and one thing that I like to say is perfection is an illusion. It's not realistic. There's no such thing as perfection. If that's what you're striving for, it's never going to happen.
Never going to happen. Right.
Never. So be okay with, progress, not perfection.
Right.
Yeah. For me, I was so blessed that I had an amazing therapist when I first got sober. And he really taught me this difference between sobriety and recovery, and called me on my shit and, all those things that needed to happen, because my ego was pretty big too. And again, that was the defense that I had, because I felt so small inside that I had to seem so big on the inside to cover up for that. Sure. So with that, and then I started reading books. I started reading, Dan Millman, Way of the Peaceful Warrior,
Love that.
Wayne Dyer, Deepak Chopra, I started reading those books, and the Tao of Pooh, which was life-changing for me. And I started doing that. And then I started going to spiritual retreats and realizing it's not about addict recovery, because for a while, that was my leading thing, checking out the grocery store. Oh God, sorry, I made a mistake. But hey, I'm a newly recovering drug addict. I mean, it's like I told everybody. But after a while, it became more quiet for me. And I realized that I had a lot of work to do. And I did it through my reading, journaling. I did a lot of journaling. Yeah. I think that was one of the lifesavers for me. And then a few years ago, I found all my old journals and I went to go read them again. Man, I was in so much pain back then, but I'm so glad I had an outlet to get rid of that. And one of my favorite stories is I remember writing about this girlfriend I had, Miriam, and how she broke up with me and left me, and how heartbroken I was. And I was like, oh my God, I can't believe she left me. And I thought we were so good for each other and she was great. And I can't believe she left. And now I'm never going to find love again. And then I'm thinking, who's Miriam? I have no idea at all. I don't know if she was blonde, brunette, 6 feet tall, 5'2". I have no idea at all. But back then, it was such a big deal.
It was your world.
And again, putting that into perspective, these things that we think are so monumental, how much does it really matter in the long term?
Right.
Yeah.
Well said.
And really putting that our happiness, so much external of ourselves, onto another person,
Yeah, that's a total trap when we start doing that, having other people in charge of our happiness or our success or our whatever. No, it doesn't work that way.
What I also think here too, and maybe this will make sense, as we age, as we get older. I mean, at least for me, I believe it or not, I do like the peace and quiet. You know, and I wish I could take a lot of these kids and just fast forward them about 20 years, you know, because there is something about aging and things start to slow down anyway, and things are not a big deal. It's a lot of stuff is just not a big deal anymore. And so I hope these kids can at least make it, you know, to a certain age. So at some point they go, oh yeah, you know what? That isn't all that important.
Yeah. Well, and there's so much living for the chemical reactions that happen in our brain. And it's kind of, I had a talk with my son. I'm like, he wanted to understand a little bit more. He really switched on, and I'm like, I wanted every chemical reaction that I could get. I wanted my fight or flight or flee mode. I wanted all that stuff coming constantly. I'm like, we just don't always feel good. Doesn't mean we feel bad, but we don't always feel good. And if you overactivate this shit, trust me, you're going to pay for it down the line.
There's a price to pay. And, you know, it's funny when you talk about the perspective of age. It reminded me of a story that my sponsor told me. I'm thinking it'll be okay to tell this here.
Of course.
Feel free to edit it out if it's not. So the story is, one day a young bull and an old bull are standing on the top of the hill looking down at a field of cows. And the young bull says, hey, why don't we run down the hill and fuck us a cow? And the old bull says, no, let's walk down the hill and fuck them all.
We will not edit that out. I love that one.
I love it. And that's the thing about perspective. You know, when you're young, you want it right now.
Right.
Let's just take our time, and there's more to be had if we just kind of ease our way through it.
That's right. I'm going to remember that one, Randy.
Yeah, I know that one you don't forget. Yeah.
Well, that's kind of even in that process of working the steps. God, I almost dropped his name. Another buddy is like, well, I'm starting step work and I just want to get through it. And I was like, hey, guess what? You're going to be doing them all the rest of your life. Certain stuff is going to come back and cycle it around. Now, if your sponsor thinks that he can approach with you, my newest sponsor, we went through it pretty quick, but I'd already kind of touched on the process. So I was like, yeah, we can do it, but we revisit it all the time. Don't be in such a hurry. Take it at the pace that it gets presented to you.
Right. Oh, yeah. And 10, 11, 12 are daily steps to work. Yeah.
Well, now I probably do things just unconsciously in the 12 steps that just are a part of my life. So I'm not even thinking about it. It just happens, you know, and that's kind of a nice place to be, you know, because like we said, this is not a foot race, and people are going to, you know, the 12 steps are something that you work or try to work every day. Every day, something. Just pick one thing again. Slow it down. You know, I love the guys that said, "Well, I got all these amends to make." Well, okay, but slow it down. Do it at a nice pace. Okay.
Yeah, there's no rush. Again, there's no there.
Right.
You know, and you know, it's funny you say that. The other day, I said something at work, and it bugged me for like 4 days. And then the next time I went back to work, I went to my coworker and I said, hey, I just want to apologize for what I did last week. She said, what? What did you do?
Right.
And I said, well, you know, you were talking to that person and I interrupted and I felt bad about that. And I realized I don't want to do that anymore. Just kind of let you do your thing and not get in the middle of it. So I just want to apologize for doing that. And she was like, oh, that was no big deal.
Right.
And it wasn't a big deal to her, but it was to me. It was something that kind of bugged me. And I'm a believer we clean our side of the street.
Yep.
And that was something on my side of the street. It might have been just a little piece of trash, but it was a little piece of trash.
Right.
So I wanted to clean it up. So I think when you're living a life of recovery, it's like those things are noticeable and you go take care of things as they come up.
I had that happen here with Shannon. I don't know if you're sitting there. Our awesome coworker here. She's just amazing. And we somehow are talking something about her cars. Everybody seems to ask me when there's issues with their cars here. I don't know why I became the guy, but something about the brakes. And I realized the way I said it to her, to me, looking back, felt condescending. She didn't take it that way, but it still was like, I sorry if that came off condescending. I didn't mean it. It was like, this is a person I care about. I need to make sure we're good.
I got to tell this one short story. When I have a huge family. My wife's family is enormously big. And so when I was in my using days, we would go over for Thanksgiving and Christmas and those things. And I'd always wind up in this back bedroom, like a lump of shit back there with drool coming out of my face. And, and my family would find me back there half the time, right?
I have this visualization in my head, right?
Oh yeah, that's it. Okay. That's the look. Right. And of course, after I rifled through her medicine cabinet to find out what she had in there, right? And so as the years went on, and so this happened even as little as 2 years ago, I would always, when we go over there, I would always ask if the front bathrooms were being used, if this was a function, I would say, can I go use the bathroom in the back? And she would look at me or my brother-in-law, either one, and go, well, yeah, why? And I said, I just wanted to ask. So I did that for years and years. And finally, about a year ago, I asked the same question. We were over there and she goes, why are you always asking me if you can use the damn bathroom back there? All right. And I told her, I said, because of the old days and where you guys would find me. And I just want everybody to know when I walk back there, I'm actually going to the bathroom. Okay. Wow. And she just looked at me and said, oh my God. And she said, and she just kind of gave me a hug and said, thank you.
Awesome.
Yeah. They didn't realize anything was going on, but it was important to me that I asked. All right.
Sure.
I mean, it's just one of those things in recovery that every now and then I do have this honesty streak, I think. And but no,
rigorous honesty.
Yeah. It just had to be done. That's all.
Yeah. Very cool.
Randy, how did it go for you? It's interesting you shared your journal of stuff that I didn't know. So I might have to message you and ask you about that because I'm like, I need to start writing again. But then when you met your wife, how was that process going in? Because you were sober when you met your wife, right?
Oh, yeah. I was 20 something years sober. Yeah.
Wow. Right. Because you were a young buck.
17, 18? No. Yeah. I was like 17, 18 years by then.
Yeah, because you were one of those young, wonderful anomalies that, yes, you can do it. You were 23 when you got sober?
24 and got sober and no relapses. I made that decision and I was done. And I didn't ever want to go back there again. Yeah.
Good for you.
Yeah, so it's total miracle.
How was that approaching a relationship and that rigorous honesty?
It was difficult at first, but I didn't like dating women who were in the program. I felt like one addict was enough in a relationship. And for those who make it work with both being in recovery, God bless you, man. That's awesome. But I made the choice that I wasn't going to look for that. So my wife, not in recovery, not an addict. She talks about in college, I smoked marijuana once. He. Really? Okay. So it was great. But one of the things that I would do early on in the relationships, and I did this with my wife on the first date, we're eating sushi and I'm like, well, I'm in recovery from addiction too. And I kind of went into the story and I wanted to see, does it scare the shit out of them and they're running out the restaurant or are they okay with it and can deal with it? So it's like, here I am. If you don't like this, that's cool. You can go. But if you're up for this, it's going to be quite the journey.
Right.
Yeah.
And she was like, wow, that's an amazing story. And we just hit it off and it was awesome. And she still doesn't really understand addiction and she doesn't have to. We're talking now about codependency and how that plays in relationships. And it just works.
Yeah.
That's great.
Well, a lot of us, that underlying defects hand raised up was definitely the codependency, the snorting of others, especially women. And when I really went full bore, not just white knuckling sobriety, and my girlfriend, now we've been friends for a long time. But when it was the date, we both laid out rules and boundaries right away. And that was an amazing thing, that when I would try to do that, like you, or even before the date, here's the reality. Are you scared now? And it's fine. And they thought that they could break that boundary. It's like, oh no, I meant what I said about no first kiss, no holding hands, getting to know you. You may not be the only person I date, so I want you to know my rules. This is how I date. It's literally going out, getting to know someone. Right. Romantic side needs to stay over there. Otherwise, we could get crazy codependency really fucking fast. I'm not doing that. Yeah.
Exactly. Good for you. Nice. And that's hard to do. Another recovery is hard. I don't want to sugarcoat for your audience that, here are 3 guys who are in recovery, and oh boy, and I got some funny stories for you. The first couple of years sucked. It was horrible. Yeah. Turning everything around. My whole world was upside down. I was more suicidal in my first year of sobriety than I was in my last year of using.
Wow.
So it's hard. So, for those who are watching or listening, this recovery thing is not an easy thing to do. That's why we get support from each other. But once you get through that first part, man, it just gets so beautiful after that. I can't even put into words how grateful I am for the amazing life that I have today and all the things that have come in. Shit, man. I'm the friggin' doorman at the Grand Floridian Resort at Walt Disney World. Hello. If you were that when I was 2 years sober, I'd be like, dude, you must have some good stuff on you. So, life just gets beautiful when you stay out of your own way and just take the next indicated step to take care of yourself in a positive way.
Yeah, absolutely. My wife and I, we've known each other since we were 16. And we got married at 24, and we never even had a formal date. We just knew that we were going to get married someday. And I'm still married to the woman. I'll be 43 years here in a couple of weeks. But when I finally got sober in 2001, I agree with you totally. It sucked big time, Yep. And I had to sit there and as much as I thought I knew my wife, and I did, all right, I still had to make major changes, and so did she. Okay, because I wasn't always a flaming drug addict, right? While I knew her and while we were married, but the last 2 to 3 years of my using was hell for everybody.
Sure.
And how God, to give her just the credit for staying with me, is she's the one that deserves that credit. And she even gave me that space in order to have time to change. But there was also a side of her that said, I don't give a shit about your recovery. You're going to work. You've got a family to support. All right. Yeah. Oh, and you are going to go to all of those meetings, and you are going to do those things. But, she gave me enough slack, but she also gave me enough tough love to where it worked, and talk about grateful, people around her call her St. Kathy because that's the only way I made it through.
Randy, what was your biggest takeaway from doing your Tedx speech?
Oh, what a friggin' honor.
I post it up on Facebook for people if whoever's watching, listening.
Yeah, I just, people kept saying, go do a TED Talk. You have this great story. And I went and I did it. And I started doing the applications, and people like, oh, you're going to have to do probably a dozen applications and just don't get bothered when you get turned down. And I actually went to a coach and said, someone who knew how to get people on TED stages. And I said, what do I need to do? And he gave me some tips, and I did what he told me to do. It's kind of like getting a TED sponsor. And I did what he told me to do. And I started doing the applications, and I thought, let me start local, and then I'll just branch it out. and I applied for the first one that I wanted to get into. It was here in Orlando, and she accepted me. I mean, I got a yes to my first one. So thank you. And I prepared and I talked to friends and I rehearsed it. And the hardest part is making it, 15 minutes or 12 minutes, whatever it was. That was the hardest part. How do I make the biggest impact in the shortest amount of time?
Right.
And I did it. And now, I mean, just the thrill to be able to go to TED.com and put in my name and something comes up, that was pretty special. And even though, the woman who put it on, she didn't hire the best audio person, so the audio is pretty messed up. But to me, it's about the message more than how it comes across. So just turn your volume up a little bit. But it was just such an honor to be asked to do that. Just the blessings just keep coming.
They keep coming. You bet.
Randy, if people want to find out more about you, how can they find you, my friend?
Best way is through my website, randyspeaks.com. And now you can find me at esteemfest.com. And that's esteem, like self-esteem, ESTEEM fest.com. So we just launched the website like a few weeks ago. So I'm really excited to get that thing off the ground. So Esteem Fest and Randy Speaks, that's how you can get in touch with me. And any way that I could be of service, I'm happy to do that.
Awesome. Mr. Andersen.
Randy, this has been an absolute joy. I mean, this time has flown by, and I cannot tell you how much I appreciate you coming on here and talking, and I hope we can do this again. And hell, I'm even writing down Esteem Fest. Maybe Jason and I can make it out there.
Come on out
for this, and maybe if not this year, maybe next year. But hell, we'd like to shoot for this year. So
go for it.
Hey, man, I think it'd be great. So,
well, here's one of the things I'm telling my buddies who are like doing podcasts and influencers and things like that. If you want to come out and tape some episodes while you're there with some of the speakers, go for it. It's not addiction focused, but I believe that we're all struggling with the same things right now. And it's a way also, hey, come on out and meet Jason. He's going to be there. Shake his hand, give him a hug. Come on out and let's make this a big deal. So, and we're going to do it again next year and the year after. But, dude, if you want to, I would love to meet you.
Absolutely.
We'd have so much fun. So,
fun. So I'm going to have,
let me know.
Yeah, I'm going to have Jason check into it because I can't turn on a computer without okay. But anyway, my friend, thank you so much. We will definitely be talking soon, and hopefully we'll be able to see you in October.
Awesome. And I think what you're doing is really important, and big kudos to you for putting this together and making this happen. And the way I look, if you even help one person, you've helped, that's one of the things I like in the Jewish faith. The whole thing is, if you can make a difference in one life, you make a difference in a million.
Absolutely.
So what you're doing has a huge impact. And I want to thank you for the work that you do.
If you or a loved one is struggling with addiction, please call Parents and Addicts in Need at 559-579-1551 or check us out online at painnonprofit.org. Follow us on social media at Pain Nonprofit. Please subscribe to the podcast and share with others wherever you get podcasts and on YouTube. To donate, please click the link in the description and help us save more lives gripped by addiction.
This podcast contains the views and opinions of hosts and their guests to the show. The content here should not be taken as medical advice. The content here is for informational purposes only. And because each person is sharing their unique perspective, please consult your healthcare professional for any medical questions. Views and opinions expressed in the podcast and website are our own and do not represent that of our places of work. While we make every effort to ensure that the information we are sharing is accurate, we welcome any comments, suggestions, or correction of errors. Privacy is of the utmost importance to us. For those wishing anonymity, people, places, and scenarios mentioned in the podcast have been changed to protect confidentiality at the request of certain guests. This website or podcast should not be used in any legal capacity whatsoever, including but not limited to establishing standard of care in a legal sense or as a basis for expert witness testimony. No guarantee is given regarding the accuracy of any statements or opinions made on the podcast or website. In no way does listening, reading, emailing, or interacting on social media with our content establish a doctor-patient relationship. If you find any errors in any of the content of this podcast or blogs, please send a message through the contact page.